It's that tradition like none other. The NBA All-Star discussion on who's the starter and who the reserves are. We get into it next on Beyond the Locker Room. Another year, another season of NBA basketball, another I guess season of debate of who should be on the team, who should be on the All-Star team. Is the All-Star game actually worthwhile? Is the format right? Blah, 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 blah. Well, anyways, we're going to get into the discussion today about the starters for the East and West, and then we're going to break down some, kind of like who potentially could be on the reserves, which is always the fun of the debate about who won't make it, who's going to get snubbed, so on and so forth. So let's get into the East. The East gives you Giannis, Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Maxey, Jaylen Brown, and Cade Cunningham. Honestly, I have no issue with those five. If you had to give me true serum, I feel those are the five that should be in the Eastern Conference as the most dominant players in the Eastern Conference. Someone like, say, Giannis, in this case, on a losing team. However, Giannis is Giannis, and he's still one of the best five players in the league, period. It doesn't matter what he's doing, he's going to be there. On the Western Conference sides for the starters, I must admit, Steph started off a little slow and his fans didn't get things going initially on the first couple of rounds of voting, but they picked up near the end and he got in, having obviously a really good season as usual. Almost 4 rebounds a game. Underrated part of Steph's game. Pretty good rebounder for his size. Luka Doncic has had a remarkable season, for the Lakers. Jokic, even though he's been injured a bit, still putting up crazy numbers, triple-double, averaging almost 30, 11, and 12, rebounds. And then, of course, the reigning MVP right here. You can see it right here. True North, strong and free. SGA coming in at 32, 6 and 4, or almost 4.5 in this case for rebounds. He's still having a fantastic season for the West-leading OKC Thunder. And finally, Big Vic. Come on now, Big Vic, the man, the myth, the legend, Victor Wembanyama is going to be your starting, is going to be starting for the West in the front court. So that's what the starters look like. Let's go down to the reserves, and we're going to start with the Western Conference because that is where, the reserves is where the fun really starts. We're going to go here and check out, I'm going to use the NBA.com, the NBA app of what these guys think about it. The contributors for the NBA app. So I'm going to give you what the thoughts are for what they think is going to be the case, and I'll give my thoughts afterwards for it. Steve Ashburner said that, hey, he has Avdia, Durant, Edwards, LeBron, Kawhi, Jamal, Murray, in this case, and Alperen Sengun, my man from Houston, the librarian. So he's looking at it from that perspective to kind of give some thoughts of why he came up with this team. He said that, he said some lists might leave LeBron off, but he thought this is a fans game and therefore he should put him in. He says, Commissioner Adam Silver plans to add a departing veteran to each squad as he got with Dirk and Dwayne in 2019. He goes, the future Hall of Famer and the 41-year-old, quite honestly, I think LeBron should be there without any sort of fanfare of hey, you're leaving, this might be one of the last times you're on the All-Star team. If you look at his numbers, I mean, he's having 23 a game. 6 and 7 or 7 and 7. He's still having LeBron type. His numbers are actually getting better as the season goes on. So this idea is some type of charity thing for LeBron. He's on there on merit in my mind. Leonard's really the tough one on this list because Kawhi has had him with the injuries, and the Clippers really only started getting hot in the last few weeks. And honestly, if I had to take a Clippers representative, I feel that Harden, who's really put in the time and work throughout the whole season to keep this thing afloat, to me, he would be the all-star representative for the Clippers. Brian Martin from NBA.com, NBA app, he had Avdia, Durant, Edwards, LeBron, Kawhi, Murray, and Sengun as well, too. He also said there's some young guns, in this case, like Chet, Lauri Markkanen, throwing in this case, Devin Booker in his prime has a shot, and I thought Booker might get in, but Booker's been missing a lot of games lately. That might hurt his momentum. Markkanen, same thing. And once again, Harden is off the list. And hey, I think Julius Randle, as he says, is, he's having a great season for Minnesota. So I think he really should get more consideration. Sean Powell said Avdia, Durant, Edwards, Harden, LeBron, Murray, and Sengun. So once again, we're seeing the same group as well here too, except he flipped Harden with Leonard and he gave the mark to him. I think I'm closer to that lineup. If I had to give me Yeah, if you had to put pressure on me on that one. John Schumann said, hey, man, he's going with a very different lineup. Avdia, Booker, by the way, Durant, Edwards, Chet Holmgren gets his first appearance, according to John. That's what he's seeing. And Kawhi Leonard and Jamal Murray. No LeBron on this list. Harden and Şengün were the toughest omissions in his mind. Holmgren got the spot because of all the players considered he's the most efficient scorer of the group, he said. And is also one of the best defenders in the league, which is true. He's also on the top, team in this case in the league. So that will also be something that should give merit as well too. So that's the West. So that's interesting to see how that plays out. On the East side, Steve Ashburner had Duran, Giddey, Jalen Johnson, Donovan Mitchell, Pascal Siakam, and Karl Anthony Towns, and of course one Scottie B, Scottie Barnes. So he said that Giddey's numbers in this case, even though he's got the hamstring injury, the numbers are hard to, even though he's on a team that's really kind of middling at best. The Bulls, but hey, he's 19, 9, and 9 essentially, which is like fantastic numbers, hey, for his team. And he said also too with Siakam, he says, hey man, Siakam's a winning player usually. It's a bad break, a gap year is what he calls it with Indiana. Since Siakam's at the pedigree, he's also a multi-time All-Star, and he's having one of his best seasons, personally. So I'm not surprised with the Siakam pick. I personally think Siakam could be on the team. I wouldn't have any issues with Siakam being on the team. Brian Martin came with Barnes, Durant, Jalen Johnson, Donovan Mitchell, Michael Porter Jr., Norm Powell, and Cat. Fair enough. Like Michael Porter Jr. is having a fantastic season. I mean, he's having huge numbers, 25, 7, and 3. You can't knock that too. Once again, it's a very similar argument to some extent to Siakam. I think Siakam's got more pedigree with it, but hey, he's having a breakout year for Porter Jr. Fair enough. But I think if I was going to take that slot, I would give that to Giddey, more likely to Porter Jr., whose team is a tad bit better on that front. Sean Powell gave it, once again, went with Barnes, Giddey, Johnson, Mitchell, Porter Jr., Norm Powell, and Cat. Norm Powell getting a lot of love, as he should. I think he will make the team. I think a lot of people in the league would like to see him to get there. I think they thought last year he got kind of like hosed a little bit. I don't know if he really did, but I know there's a certain contingent that thought so. And so I think he's going to get in this year. And the last one, John Schumann, also has Scottie Barnes, Jalen Duren, Jalen Johnson, Donovan Mitchell, Michael Porter Jr., Cat, and Derek White. First time we see his name. He said this, from his perspective, he said this became a difficult choice after Barnes and Duren, Johnson, and Mitchell were written in pen. Said Towns and White have the team success with one a star on offense and the other star on defense. Said Porter has been remarkably prolific and efficient given the lack of talent surrounding him in Brooklyn. And he said Barnes has been doing it. And he said Barnes has been doing it all except making threes for the fourth place team in the conference. He said Powell, Siakam, and Franz Wagner were the toughest omissions. So once again, you're seeing certain guys are on the bubble right now, I think, based on what we're seeing here. What is very interesting from a Raptors perspective, there is no discussion of Brandon Ingram amongst these four, which I find very interesting considering what the fan vote is and kind of like more TV media has been discussing the last week or two. So that is an interesting dichotomy, let's put it that way, versus what we're seeing in the big TV broadcasts and some of their panels, as well as what the fans are saying who had Ingram ahead of Barnes. So this is a fascinating break. It'll be curious to see which Raptor is chosen. I think if you had to tell me 3 weeks ago, I think it was Ingram for sure. I think the momentum has swung towards Barnes in the last 3 weeks or so. So we'll see where that goes, man. But hey, man, I'm sure there'll be some discussion, some noise by somebody's fans when it's all said and done. Locker room take. I'm just going to put this one real quick and easy. This one's hilarious, I find. A few months ago, when I discussed the NBA media deal and broke down the stuff, and I told you about the Jokers on ESPN and the Jokers are on TNT, and now they're going to be on one big group. And I think at the time I said in that particular episode, I might have said it on Basketball Rewind, that believe me, this won't last long because I know in this case Chuck, I know how they roll, and I know how ESPN rolls, and this is not a marriage that's going to last for long. So supposedly now, this week now, Charles is out here not pleased in this case here, not pleased at all with how ESPN is treating the team inside the NBA. I find this fascinating because you knew this was coming. He says in this case, that he says that, they've been kind of been sidelined, I guess, essentially. I guess sidelined is what the way he's looking at it. And, he doesn't understand. I guess he would like to have more opportunities on ESPN. So, the article here, this one's from the U.S. Sun. There's a whole bunch of them, but essentially it's a Reuters type of report. Not Reuters, but it's a national report. Charles Barkley rips ESPN over, quote, inside the NBA treatment and lack of shows so far this season. He goes, quote, we've complained. I'm shocked. Charles complaining? No. Come on now. Charles complaining? Oh, please. What, I told you folks. I told you folks. I told you folks. I hate to say it, but I gotta say it. These dudes are only in for self. They don't care about actually making sure they put the best product out there. They don't care about, in this case, making sure the NBA is in the best light. It is always about them. It's always about Charles. It's always about Shaq. It's always about Stephen A. Smith. It's always about ESPN. That is the issue. And I think what you've seen this year, and I found it interesting, we're now about 3 months into the season now, is a bit of fascinating thing to observe how slowly but surely, between Amazon and NBC, the way they've handled things with care and how they've actually, promoted, discussed very critically but very responsibly about the league and about the game. And it's interesting to see how the conversations are changing online slightly because they are setting the tone. Sometimes some of them are very interesting conversations. You had one the other day where Steve Nash was talking about American basketball and where it is. Had a few folks, of course, some of the Yankees upset. Fair enough. But at least it was a very constructive conversation to be had. What is it? Where is American basketball at this point? When it's all said and done. Don't get me wrong. Of course, America's got tons of depth. But there's a lack of bigs that we do see now that it might come back to haunt them in years to come, perhaps. But I think at least the discussion being had is a nice, good, solid discussion in a responsible way. NBC has done some of the same stuff as well too, and slowly but surely you see online conversations, churning and becoming much more responsible on how they're being handled, not the clickbait first take crap that we usually get and the nonsense we get on that was on TNT. So they've been kind of put to the corner inside the NBA as far as they feel. He said pretty much Barkley has argued that ESPN must improve its broadcast schedule for inside the NBA. He don't know ESPN. Good luck, Chuck. He has explained that he is, quote, unsatisfied with the frequency of episodes throughout the 2025-2026 NBA season. What we have here, folks, is that Charles realized that his relevance is dissipating by the day, by the week, by the month. And in some ways, that's a good thing, folks. Trust me, it's a good thing. And now, we'll see how this all plays out. I mean, right now they have a long-standing deal right now inside the NBA. They said that this came as part of a 10-year deal for ESPN to broadcast the league. So I'm not sure how long this is going to last. We shall see. But I think right now things are going to come to a head by the end of the year. It'll be interesting to see how they handle the playoffs with these guys. I'm going to be fascinated to see how they deal with that. I'll leave it there, folks. Thanks for everything as always. Thanks for the support. You can find me on X, Facebook, Blue Sky, and of course now newly Instagram. Check me out there for some interesting takes on some other sports. And also you can always find me right here on YouTube where you can like, comment, share, and subscribe, guys. I always appreciate the subscriptions. And once again, man, we'll talk to you. I talk to you next week. Keep it locked, guys. Peace.